You know, it all kicked off with a gut feeling. It always does, doesn't it? That tiny, nagging voice in the back of your head. For me, it was this almost imperceptible shift in the air, a weird, unfamiliar softness in Laura's voice whenever she'd casually mention, "Oh, I'll just be out for lunch with a friend." It was the kind of gentle tone you'd only ever pick up on if you'd spent years getting pricked by the sharp edges, the very same edges you foolishly thought you had managed to smooth over with your devotion. Laura and I, we'd been married for 8 years. Man, that's 8 years of shared morning coffees, of whispered late-night dreams, and of that comfortable, silent language you can only speak with someone you know inside and out. I honestly thought we were rock solid. Yeah, sure, we had our squabbles, but who doesn't? I just chalked it all up to the normal bumps and scrapes of doing life together. That was my reality before the phone. Before I glanced over and saw that late-night text pop up on her screen, resting on the couch right next to me. Can't stop thinking about today. The message was from a name I didn't recognize. When I brought it up, she just waved it away with this brittle, nervous little laugh. "Oh, it's nothing, honey. Just a silly group chat. You know how us girls can be." I gave a nod, deciding not to push it. Big mistake. That night, lying wide awake in our bed next to her, just staring up at the shadows on the ceiling, I knew. Deep down in my bones, I knew something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. It wasn't until a few weeks had passed, when her lunch dates started happening more and more often, and her excuses got fuzzier around the edges, that I finally decided to do something. Look, I'm not proud of it, not one bit. But I went through her phone while she was in the shower one afternoon. The texts I stumbled upon weren't just suggestive, they were a whole different ballgame. Her friend was a guy named Eric, and, well, judging by their back and forth, those lunch dates involved a hell of a lot more than a quick sandwich and some idle chit-chat. I felt this immediate, sickening rush of nausea, followed by a hot flash of rage, and then a crushing tidal wave of humiliation. My wife. My Laura was having an affair, and it was painfully obvious this wasn't just some meaningless fling. These weren't messages about simple physical lust. No, they were absolutely dripping with emotional intimacy, the exact kind of connection we used to share, the kind I was naive enough to think was still exclusively ours. For a solid week, I walked around like a ghost in my own house, carrying this toxic knowledge in silence, trying to wrap my head around what to do next. Confront her on the spot? Just pack a bag and walk out the door? Beg her for some kind of explanation? In the end, I did none of those things. Instead, I did something I'd never, ever done before in my entire life. I began to plot. Carefully, methodically, I made a plan. It all started with a bit of digging. A few late-night trips down some social media rabbit holes, and bingo. I found out Eric was a colleague of hers, some hotshot sales rep for a company she'd worked with on a recent project. And the kicker? He was married, too. I found his wife, Christine, on Facebook. A sweet-looking brunette, with kind eyes and 2 little kids, both under 5. Honestly, my heart shattered for her, but even that pang of sympathy wasn't about to stop the train I had already set in motion. The plan came together way faster than I thought it would. First things first, I hired a private investigator, a grizzled old pro named Frank, who had a face like a bulldog chewing a wasp and a zero BS attitude. Frank's photos confirmed every last one of my fears. Crystal clear pictures of them leaving a seedy hotel together, their arms brushing, faces lit up with grins. He even managed to snag a shot of them kissing in her car. There it was. Proof. Hard, cold, undeniable proof. Next up, I reached out to Christine. I kept my message short and to the point. Hi, Christine. I know this is going to be incredibly difficult to hear, but I have every reason to believe your husband, Eric, is having an affair with my wife, Laura. I've attached some photos. I am so sorry to be the one telling you this. Her response hit my inbox an hour later. It was just a single powerful sentence. Thank you for telling me. The dominoes were falling now, and frankly, I was no longer in control of where or when they would stop. But I still had one last card left to play. I needed Laura to see, with her own two eyes, the wreckage her betrayal had caused, to truly feel the crushing weight of her choices. So, I invited her to lunch. Hey, let's have a date, I said, forcing a smile that felt like cracking plastic. Just you and me. We haven't done that in ages. She actually seemed relieved, almost giddy. Maybe she thought my sudden attention was a sign that I was clueless. Oh, little did she know, she was walking right into the eye of the storm. The day of our date arrived. I set the dining room table with painstaking detail. A crisp white tablecloth, our best silverware, 2 glasses of fancy wine. On the surface, it probably looked like I was trying to rekindle a little romance. In reality, it was a stage, and the centerpiece wasn't a bouquet of flowers, but a thick manila envelope stuffed with every single damning piece of evidence Frank had dug up. Laura waltzed in, all smiles, her cheeks flushed from her latest lunch. She stopped dead in her tracks when she saw the table, her eyes nervously darting from the ominous envelope to my face. "What? What's all this?" she asked, her voice suddenly shaky. I didn't answer her. I just gestured for her to take a seat. She did, hesitantly, her once bright smile now just a faint shadow. I slid the envelope across the polished wood of the table. "Open it," I said, my voice eerily calm. She paused for a second, then her hands, shaking slightly, tore it open. Her jaw clenched as she sifted through the glossy photos and the printouts of their text exchanges. "I can explain," she stammered, but the words had zero conviction. "Explain?" I leaned back in my chair, my voice staying quiet but becoming razor-sharp. "Explain what, exactly? The fact that you've been lying straight to my face for months? That you've been sneaking around with a married man? Or maybe you can explain how you decided our marriage, our life together, was something you could just treat like it's disposable." Tears immediately welled up in her eyes. "It's not like that," she whispered, looking down. "Then what is it like, Laura?" I shot back, my voice finally rising. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks a hell of a lot like you've been having your cake and eating it too." She completely fell apart then, breaking down into heaving sobs, mumbling apologies that were just empty sounds in the air. I just sat there and let her cry, letting her stew in the absolute mess she'd made. When she finally looked up at me, her face a mess of mascara and tears, I dropped the other shoe. "I've spoken to Christine," I said flatly. Her eyes shot wide open in pure horror. "You what?" "She knows. She knows everything, just like I do. You haven't just destroyed one family, Laura. You've successfully destroyed 2. So, congratulations." And right at that moment, as if on cue, there was a sharp knock at the front door. Laura's head whipped around, her face a cocktail of raw fear and utter confusion. I stood up, walked to the door, and opened it to reveal Christine. She stepped inside, her face a mask of calm, but with eyes that were absolutely blazing with fury. And right behind her, yep, you guessed it, was Eric. Laura's face went chalk white. "What is this?" she whispered, horrified. "This," I said, giving her a cold, empty smile, "is closure." The confrontation that blew up in our dining room was, to put it mildly, ugly. Christine just unleashed years of pent-up frustration on Eric, who just stood there, stammering and sputtering like a complete fool. Laura actually tried to intervene, but Christine turned on her with the ferocity of a cornered lioness. "Don't you dare try to justify this," she snarled. "You are a selfish, deceitful—" Let's just say the words she used aren't fit for polite company. Eric finally tried to defend himself, spouting some pathetic nonsense about feeling unappreciated at home. I cut him off right there. Unappreciated? I let out a bitter laugh. "Buddy, you have two beautiful kids and a wife who would clearly move heaven and earth for you. And this is how you repay her?" By the time it was all over, everyone's emotions were stripped bare. Laura and Eric looked like hollowed-out, broken shells of the people who had walked in. Christine and I, though, we just exchanged a long look, a silent, mutual acknowledgement that we'd both somehow come out of this stronger. The fallout was swift and brutal. Laura packed her bags and was gone by that evening. I filed for divorce the very next day. Christine did the same. To add insult to injury, Eric lost his job when Christine, quite brilliantly, sent copies of all the evidence to his employer's HR department. Laura's reputation took a spectacular nosedive as the story ripped through our circle of friends and family. In the end, they had no one to blame but themselves. As for me, look, I won't pretend it was a walk in the park. There were nights I cried myself to sleep, and mornings when just getting out of bed felt like climbing a mountain. But with time, the white-hot anger began to fade, and it was replaced by this quiet, steely determination to rebuild my life from the ground up. I started seeing a therapist, took up running, and reconnected with old friends I'd let drift away. A year later, I can honestly say I'm happier than I have been in a long, long time. I've learned to value myself, to demand, not just hope for, honesty and respect from the people I let into my life. And Laura and Eric? Last I heard, their great romance imploded, unable to survive the crushing weight of all the guilt and deceit. Shocker! Revenge might not be the healthiest motivation out there, but you know what? Sometimes it's the exact catalyst you need to burn everything to the ground so you can finally reclaim your power. And believe me, I reclaimed it. Every last bit.